안녕하세요. 리플 부부의 남편 미스터 리플입니다. 오늘은 인터뷰 영상 하나를 같이 보고자 하는데요. 주제는 리플사의 달러 스테이블 코인이죠. RLUSD에 대해서 리플의 CTO, 기술 담당이죠. 기술 이사죠. 이사가 나와서 리플의 RLUSD에 대해서 함께 인터뷰하는 내용을 같이 함께 공유하고자 합니다. 특히 제가 이제 이거를 선택한 이유는 내용에는 인터뷰 내용에는 나타나고 있진 않은데 요즘 이제 첨예한 주제, 리플이 오히려 향후에 피를 버리고 RLUSD, 리플 달러 스테이블 코인 위주로 나가는 거 아니냐라고 하는 그런 의심의 눈초리, 그리고 그것과 관련된 상호 논쟁들이 활발하게 벌어지고 있습니다. 그래서 XRP 홀더분들은 좀 불안해 하시는 거죠. 야, 이거 XRP 그냥 폐기 처분 나가는 거 아니냐라는 걱정들을 많이 하시는데, 물론 그 내용에 대한 것을 CTO가 지금 오늘 인터뷰에서 얘기하는 건 아닙니다. RLUSD의 모든 것들에 대해서 이제 일반적인 내용들을 같이 얘기하고자 하는데, 제가 이제 일부러 요 이야기를 이 동영상 같이 보기 전에 모두에 꺼내는 이유는 몇 가지 좀 오해들이 있는 것 같아요. 물론 맞습니다. 그러니까 리플의 가장 독특한 시스템이죠. ODL, ODL, On Demand Liquidity. 그러니까 이건 이제 요구되어지는 유동성이라고 하는 건데, 이건 뭐냐면은 국제 송금 거래소 A라는 국가의 금융기관과 B라는 국가의 금융기관이 있을 때 이제 국제 거래를 송금을 서로 간에 하지 않겠습니까? 이럴 때 이제 중간에서 이 유동성 풀에서 리코더티 유동성 내에 XRP가 있는 거죠. 그래서 XRP가 이 송금 과정을 대리하는 겁니다. 그러다 보니까는 시간이 빨라지고 수수료도 거의 안 들고, 이제 요는 이거를 이제 달러 스테이블 코인 시대가 되면서 이거를 XRP로 안 하고 그냥 달러 스테이블 코인을 그냥 쏘는 거죠. 서로 간에. 뭐 그게 RLUSD가 됐건, 그 다음에 아시는 것처럼 이 리플 냈죠. 즉 XRP 블록체인, 그 다음에 리플 블록체인에서 USDT나 USDC도 쓸 수 있거든요. 예. 그러다 보니까 예를 들면 A라는 국가와 B라는 국가의 금융기관이 서로 간에 송금 거래를 할 때, 상호 간에 거래를 할 때 RLUSD나 USDT나 USDC로 하면 되잖아요. 이렇게 되면 이제 XRP가 필요 없지 않느냐, 이런 건데, 한편으로 반은 맞고 반은 틀린 얘기입니다. 이제 이게 뭐냐면 블록체인의 구조에 대해서 좀 얘기를 해보면 이런 거예요. RLUSD가 됐건 USDC가 됐건 USDT가 됐건, 그 다음에 이제 더 개발을 해서 리플 냈죠. XRP 레저가 더 많은 종류의 달러 스테이블 코인을 그 위에서 돌아갈 수 있게, 운용할 수 있게 할 수 있어요. 근데 지금 현재는 RLUSD가 중심이고 아직 거래가 이루어지진 않은 걸로 알고 있지만, 지금 현재는 일단 원하기만 한다면 USDT나 USDC도 리플 레저에서 XRP 레저에서 돌아갈 수 있어요. 근데 이제 이렇게 된다 할지라도 중요한 거는 이 RLUSD나 USDC나 USDT라고 하는 달러 스테이블 코인이 직접 송금되어질 때 블록체인 위에서 이루어지잖아요. 이 블록체인 위에서 운영된다는 거죠. 그럼 운영되면서 이 블록체인의 거버넌스 비용, 유지 비용이나 가스비, 수수료나 이런 것들은 뭐로 지불하게 될까요? XRP로 지불하게 되는 겁니다. 예. 그러니까 이게 공존하는 거지 무엇이 무엇을 대체하는 게 아니에요. 물론 달러 스테이블 코인이 생겼기 때문에 그건 RLUSD 뿐만이 아니에요. 달러 스테이블 코인 존재 자체가 원래 XRP가 ODL의 유동성 화폐로서 국제 송금의 기반이 되는 그런 역할을 달러 스테이블 코인이 대신할 수 있다라고 하는 건 맞아요. 그럼에도 불구하고 이게 XRP의 폐기나 XRP의 축소를 얘기하는 게 아니라, 그럼에도 불구하고 이렇게 전 세계적 규모로 만약에 XRP 레저가 스위프트 시장에 한 20%만 먹어도 그곳에서 달러 스테이블 코인을 통해서 송금이 된다 쳐요. 그런다 할지라도 그 엄청난 규모의 그 달러 스테이블 코인의 송금 및 수령, 이런 것을 블록체인에서 하게 되잖아요. 이럴 때 얼마나 많은 XRP가 필요하겠습니까? 사용하게 되는 거죠. 그러면 여전히 XRP의 존재 의미가 있는 거예요. 축소되는 게 아니라. 게다가 또 하나는, 이제 여러분들이 이거는 이제 오늘 그 주요 주제는 아니지만, 또 하나는 지금 XRP가 금융기관들이 쓰는데 좀 두려워하는 유일한 이유 중에 하나가 뭐냐면 XRP 가격이 변동하잖아요. 그러니까 송금 시에 XRP 가격이 떨어질 수도 있기 때문에 이제 그게 두려운 거거든요. 암호화폐가 변동성이 심하잖아요. 그래서 지금 리플사에서는 뭐를 개발했냐면은, 말하자면 블록체인 내에서 시스템적으로 시장에서 XRP 가격이 떨어지더라도 이것을 보충해 줄 수 있는, 즉 손해보지 않게 해줄 수 있는 그런 시스템을 이미 개발을 완료했습니다. 그래서 XRP를 활용하더라도 전혀 어떤 가격 변동성으로 인한 손해를 보지 않게 보장해주는, 100% 보장해주는 그런 시스템이 있기 때문에 손쉽게 그렇게 달러 스테이블 코인을 쓰기가 쉽지가 않을 거예요. 개인은 몰라도. 근데 중요한 건 뭐냐면 XRP는 어차피 개인 시장도 보긴 하지만 보는 건 기관 시장입니다. 기관 시장이 기관 인증이나 자격 증명 이런 거 없이 그리고 국가나 금융권, 국제 간 거래에 있어서의 규제나 제도적인 보장 이런 거로부터 자유로운 달러 스테이블 코인을 그렇게 마음대로 기관들이 쓸 수 있을까요? 게다가 하나는 손해보지 않는, 아무리 가격이 변동돼도 손해보지 않는 그런 시스템에 있는 XRP가 풍부하게 있는데, 개인은 달러 스테이블 코인을 쓰더라도 기관은 과연 달러 스테이블 코인을 이렇게 쓸까요? 게다가 달러 가치는 계속 떨어져 가는데, 물론 달러 스테이블 코인은 1달러에 고정돼 있습니다. 하지만 달러 그 자체가 가치가 점점 떨어져 가는데요. 글쎄요. 저는 특히 개인은 몰라도 기관은 거래 증명이나 이 기관 증명 같은 것들이 필요하기 때문에 리플 레저가 이제 Permissioned DEX라고 합니다. 승인된 탈중앙화 금융 그 틀을 통해서, 즉 리플 레저 틀을 통해서 할 거기 때문에 XRP를 그냥 쓰면 되는 거예요. 그런 부분이 있기 때문에 달러 스테이블 코인 때문에 RLUSD 때문에 XRP가 잠식될 것이다 라고 하는 거는 좀 기후에 지나지 않고, 또 한편으로는 좀 블록체인의 구조에 대한 뭘 이해해서 출발한 의심이 아닌가 싶고요. 그래서 물론 개인 시장과 기관 시장은 분화될 것이다. 그래서 개인 시장에는 달러 스테이블 코인이 유리할 것이고, 기관, 금융기관 시장에서는 여전히 XRP가 유리할 것이다. 이렇게 좀 정리하면서 자, 이제 리플의 CTO의 인터뷰를 연이어 보도록 하겠습니다. 구독과 좋아요, 알림 설정 꼭 부탁드릴게요. 자, 이제 영상 보도록 하겠습니다.
Ripple Chief Technology Officer David Schwartz.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. You know, Andy and I have been talking all day about this convergence of the traditional financial world and the crypto world that has been building, that both of us have been in such a part of for the last so many years. Talk to me from your standpoint, from building Ripple for so long, from going through the ups and downs of Ripple, being here today, what it means for you.
It's tremendously exciting. I feel like we really are on the cusp of a mass institutional adoption, both of DeFi and of other blockchain technologies. I think this is also like one of the key obstacles to mass retail adoption. A lot of people in the space previously thought that retail adoption was like the big wave, but I think institutional adoption is a precursor. You have to connect to where people are. You have to go to where the value is. You can't build a new financial system from zero, ignoring the existing financial system where everybody's money is, where all the value is, where the real world is, trillions of dollars in value. You can't just say, oh, forget about all that. Let's just build something new over here. It doesn't work. And so I think this wave of institutional adoption over the next year or two is going to be what's going to pave the way for mass retail adoption. And then we can deliver on those promises. Like, we all want to bank the unbanked, but the unbanked, they have to be able to spend their money to buy groceries and pay their phone bill. And so we have to have that institutional connectivity. And I don't think there are any obstacles. I think that's and I think this conference shows that.
You guys have shown a tremendous amount of resilience over the last couple of years and helped score some of the biggest wins from of the industry against those who doubted it. XRP is in one of our flagship indices and was the top performer. It's been an exciting couple of months. Like, how has the perception of the firm changed from inside and outside? A lot of people are taking a look at Ripple that really maybe hadn't before. How are you thinking about conveying what the company does to people who are looking at it for the first time?
Yeah, it has been a huge difference. 4 years ago, we had what I called the worst Christmas ever when I found out that the SEC was suing us.
Yes.
And, a lot of people thought that would just be the end of our business, and it could have been. And I'm glad to say that, the industry eventually rallied around, recognizing the regulatory overreach. And I think things have gotten, obviously a lot better since then. More recently, the changes in the United States over the past couple, months or so have just been, unbelievable. And it has unlocked business in the United States, but also business overseas. I think I didn't realize this until the change happened. There were a lot of other countries that kind of take their regulatory cues from the United States. And so when the United States didn't seem serious, they didn't really seem all that serious either. Now there's more international competition to bring in innovation. I think now we also, Ripple has a new product, RLUSD, which is a stable coin, which we think is going to be great for applications ranging from things things like payments to DeFi as a collateral, as a way of moving value from one place to another. And then, of course, the XRP ledger adding DeFi capability. That's not the first generation of DeFi capability was very experimental, and it was looking for like absurdly high yield. It was gambling, but let's be honest, it was gambling. That's cool. Like, that attracts people. Vegas was built on gambling, right? But like, the next wave of real utility is going to be built around things that are much less interesting. A savings account is not super interesting. It doesn't provide high yield. It doesn't have high risk. You don't check the balance of your savings account every day. But it has real world utility. And I think that avenue of real world utility that Ripple's leaned hard into is the tokenization of real world assets, from very useful financial products all the way to things like venture capital and real estate and, that whole spectrum.
You mentioned RLUSD, and Andy asked one of our guests this earlier, and I want to get your opinion on it. Do we need so many stable coins? What is going to happen in this world of stable coins as this industry becomes more mature?
We don't need that many stable coins. There's reasons why you might want more than one. There is actually some special.
Two, right?
well, one is diversification of risk, right? It would be really weird if we build this entire DeFi ecosystem that's all decentralized and it's all based on Ripple's reserve, and if Ripple collapses, the whole system collapses. There might be people who don't trust Ripple. I don't know why they wouldn't, but and they wouldn't be able to use RLUSD, and obviously the whole world, right? So yeah, you can make an argument that there's some small number, but there is some specialization that really does happen. Stablecoins aren't yield bearing, and so that they're not volatile, and they're tied to jurisdictions, they're tied to particular entities. So you could sort of imagine a world where you have this proliferation of millions of stablecoins. I don't think that's, millions is obviously not true, but like a large number. I think there probably will be a bit of a shakeout and some consolidation. But I do think, 5, seems like roughly the right order of magnitude.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's special about RLUSD there? What are you going in with as the competitive advantage?
Well, RLUSD is issued through a U.S. trust based in New York State, which is like the gold standard for reliability. The reserve is just cash equivalent, short-term treasuries. It's audited on a regular basis. So as far as the compliance to gold standard, it's backed by Ripple. Ripple has an enormous balance sheet. We've been here for a long time. We're being as transparent as possible. So to some extent, all of that is table stakes, but we want to make sure we do that exactly right. We're going to be using it in our own payment flows. There's going to be applications in DeFi, a movement of value cross-chain. I think as we turn that curve to mass adoption, not just institutional adoption, but mass adoption, there's going to have to be ways. If my money is over here and I need to buy groceries, there's going to have to be ways to move. And I think the RLUSD is going to be well positioned to be that sort of value movement.
Do you think that there's, I was, on some podcast at some point, somebody made a great point that some payments need to be really, 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 really secure. Whereas if I Venmo Jen money for lunch, she knows where to find me if the payment fails. There are different layers, and Jen might be willing to pay less for security for the lunch transaction than moving $10 billion. Do you think that that's true, and does that set the stage for different levels of speed and cost versus security? How is your company thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
There is not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. There's not going to be a one-chain world. It's not going to be a one-product world. There is no conceivable universe where Ripple is the only successful blockchain company, right? That's just impossible. There's going to be a broad range of things that people need, and you called out an important one, which is there's applications that are not very cost sensitive, and you can trade off cost from many other things. There's applications that are just super cost sensitive. There's cases where speed is of the essence, and then there's multi-million-dollar transactions where making sure that we don't do it if we didn't really want to is of the essence. I think you're going to see that spectrum. We focused, as Ripple as a company, in our enterprise products, is focused mainly on institutional payments, where there's that balance. They're cost sensitive, but they're very sensitive to things like 24/7 availability, compliance and then bringing costs down. But yeah, I think you will see a whole spectrum of products, and already you see chains that are focused on very fast payments, chains that are focused on very high security, and I think that's definitely why interoperability is going to be so important. If I have to try to figure out where your money is and if we have to work out the interoperability as humans, it's going to be inconvenient. It's going to have to just work.
You mentioned institutional adoption as the next step on the way to retail adoption, that real mass adoption. What needs to happen from an infrastructure perspective for this industry to be ready for that?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different pieces that we need, but one of the big ones is we need products that just work, that are easy to understand. We need people to be able to get their money in and out very easily. They need to be able to pay at retail points of sale. On the institutional adoption side, compliance has to be worked out. We need clear regulations, particularly in the U.S. If you look at, I used to think that, like, well, if the U.S. is not a friendly regulatory environment, just do it elsewhere. It doesn't really work. The U.S. puts its tendrils through, there are many people who are like, oh, we'll tokenize like U.S. treasuries, but we won't have a U.S. regulatory nexus. You can't build a business that way. So it's going to take institutions who commit and who stake out, space in a growing part of the industry.
David, thank you very much for joining us here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So nice to talk to you.
오늘 리플 부부의 남편 미스터 리플이 리플의 CTO 인터뷰 영상 공유하는 시간 가졌습니다. 시청해 주셔서 감사드리고요. 다음번 시간에 다시 찾아뵙도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.